Hey guys, welcome back. Ashley D. Will here. I hope everyone is doing well. So you guys please remember to like, subscribe, and share. And so today's topic is a very important one concerning children and concerning you. Okay, this is called the most effective parenting style. Not the most popular, not the most fashionable, not the easiest, but the most effective parenting style. That's what we're talking about today. Now, as you know, parenting styles throughout the ages come and go year to year, decade to decade, and so parenting styles are always changing. Some are in vogue, some are out of vogue, but if you have wisdom and you want the best for your children and for yourself, because being around children who are miserable can make parents miserable, you want to back up and look at the most effective parenting style in the long run. And this will help you in the way you parent. Because when you parent foolishly, you reap what you sow. And when you parent wisely, you're going to reap what you sow in that as well. Okay, so let's take a look at 4 different styles of parenting and what this long-term study showed about parenting styles. Now, this was, again, a long-term study, and the people involved were Diana Baumrind, she's a developmental psychologist, and Eleanor Maccabee and John Martin, who were Stanford researchers. So they're the ones that did this study, long-term study of children, and then when they grew up, monitoring and noting how they behaved and their resiliency and all of that. So that's what this study is about, and I want to just mention it before I forget that the Mayo Clinic Press article, that's not too long, it summarizes most things in this study very well and succinctly. It's the Mayo Clinic Press article. I'm going to include that link below for you, those of you who want to take this baton and run with it for your parenting if you have children. The 4 styles of parenting are all very different. So this is the grid here, okay? Now, responsiveness to the children goes up here, and demandingness of what you expect from your children goes this way, okay? So let's review the 4 types of parenting that we have. The first type is permissive parenting. You may have a tendency to be a permissive parent if you had parents who were super strict, punished you all the time. You weren't allowed to speak at the table. They never asked you what you wanted. They were like dictators and you had no say and you couldn't speak. You were like a slave and they were your dictator. You may want to go to the other extreme in your mind to say, I'm going to balance things out. Well, permissive parenting is very backwards. It's very backwards. It is for those who don't know how to parent, who are not willing to learn how to parent properly, and they're just reacting maybe from their childhood, or they could be just overwhelmed by the whole idea and they just think, well, I'm just not going to get too involved. Just let the child do whatever he or she wants and then maybe there won't be much trouble. Well, that may be what you think now, but later it is going to lead to a lot of trouble. So this style of parenting, permissive parenting, is child-driven. Everything is all about the child. The child gets to do whatever he or she wants to, and as a result, the child becomes very self-centered and can eventually grow up to have a narcissistic type personality. The permissive parenting style rarely gives structure or boundaries or rules and never enforces them. So there's usually no rules and there's no enforcement of those rules. And these type of parents overindulge the child. They give the child whatever the child wants because they are trying to avoid conflict. So if conflict triggers you or you don't like it, I am someone who hates conflict, and I've had to do a lot of work on that part of me that was so avoidant of conflict. but you can do the same if you have that tendency. There are skills you can learn. There's all kind of things you can do, but the permissive style of parenting overindulges the child, spoils the child, distracting them all the time and never dealing with whatever the issue is because they want to avoid conflict. So I think this is pretty common, but I want to warn you about this type of parenting. It will backfire on you, okay? You can be raising little monsters, or as I heard one neighbor say recently, little terrorists, okay? So let's come down here to this box. We've looked at the permissive style of parenting. Now let's look at the neglectful style of parenting. This style of parenting is uninvolved. This style of parenting has this body language. You stay over there and I'm over here. Don't bother me. Don't upset me. It's very neglectful of the child or absent. The parent is always at work or always gone and just kind of dismissing the role of being a parent. This parenting style provides little to no nurturance to the child or guidance for the child. Very little to no nurturing and guiding. So the child is left to figure everything out for him or herself. Lastly, this parenting style is indifferent. That means the parent does not care and doesn't want to know about it for whatever reason. The social, emotional, and behavioral needs of the child. So in the neglectful parenting style, the needs of the child are not being met. And so there's a lot of trauma here. And this type of parenting style is definitely very harmful to the child. Very harmful. More so than the permissive. So the authoritarian style of parenting is parent-driven. That means it's all about the parents, all about what the parents want, all about what the parents expect, and the children are kind of like pawns on a chessboard. They kind of use the children and force the children to do what they want, and there's not a relationship between the parents and the children. It's more like a dictatorship. It's parent-driven. They set very strict rules and very strict punishment, and that's really the focus of the whole family, is the rules and the punishment. You're not allowed to speak at the table. You can never interrupt anyone. It's very dictatorial and harsh. One-way communication. The parent, like in the Victorian era, don't speak unless you're spoken to. And so it's one-way communication. The parents speak to the children, and the children don't get to respond and have no say in things. There is little to no consideration of the child's social, emotional, and behavioral needs. These both ignore and dismiss and deny the needs of the child. Okay? This, you could sum it up to say, this is all rules and no relationship, this style of parenting, and it's very dictatorial. So lastly, we have the authoritative style of parenting. This style of parenting solves problems together with the child in an appropriate, in context basis, whatever would be appropriate at the time. Some decisions the parents would have to make. Some decisions the parents would make with the children, and some decisions the children could make on their own. Whatever would be appropriate. So they solve problems together with the child. They set clear rules and expectations or boundaries with their children, and they make sure and communicate those to the children, and they have consequences for those violating those boundaries or rules that are set. And there is open communication between the parent and the children, parents and the children can come to the parents and ask a question. The parents will interact with the children, but there's more of a balance. The parents are still in charge. They're the adults, and the children are the children, but there is open communication between the parents and the children, and they give natural consequences for violating the rules. It's kind of like if you had a flock of sheep. This article puts it in this example analogy. It says, imagine that you had a flock of sheep, 2 or 3 or 4 sheep. you would put them in a green pasture. And would you just leave them out there to run around and to get attacked by the wolves and the bears and the lions? No, you wouldn't. You would put a fence around them, and you would let them play within the fence and graze and do whatever they wanted within the fence. So it's giving the children freedom to choose and freedom to do things, but within a limit. The fence has to be there. And that is a boundary or a limitation that you put on your child for safety. And when you put limits on your child and you say, no, we're not going to do that, we're going to do this or this, which one would you like? The child is comforted knowing that there's a fence. It makes them feel safe, even though they will push back against it or have a little fit over it. Deep down, they like the limitations and they need the limitations. Okay? Your children are not born knowing manners. Your children are not born knowing what's right and wrong. Your children are not born knowing any of these things. So you as the parents must teach them and train them in how to behave and what to do and what not to do. No, we don't throw our food at the table. No, we don't hit other children. No, we don't take other people's personal property and run off with it. No, we don't break dishes. All of the civilized behavior, that is what we teach and train our children as they grow up. So you can probably guess which one of these is the most effective parenting style long term. Well, one of these parenting styles has turned out to be the gold standard of parenting. And it, of course, agrees with the scripture. To love your children, encourage your children, and teach and discipline your children. There has to be a balance between the good, easy stuff and the hard stuff. See, there has to be a balance, because when there is, you're preparing your child for reality. When he moves out or she moves out into the world, it has to go deal with being in the world on her own or his own. See, you have to prepare them at home for what they're going to have to deal with in the world. So giving them the love and the encouragement, but also giving them the consequences and the discipline or the training, whatever that would be in your situation. See, there has to be that balance. This is out of balance. This is way out of balance, and this is way out of balance. That's why these do not have good long-term effects on children. But the children who are raised in the authoritative manner are balanced. They can cope with difficulties more easily. They're more stable. They're mentally more stable. So the authoritative is rules and relationship. You can kind of sum it up that way. We have a relationship, but we also have rules. We have that fence, and we're going to enforce that. Okay, so this is very important. The authoritative parenting style is the gold standard, and it is the most effective parenting style. So again, I will put this Mayo Clinic Press link below for you, so those of you who are interested can drill down and read this article and then branch out and do other research if you like. These are the folks that were involved in the study, and just a couple of tips with some scriptures for parents. Children are a gift from God, the scripture says. They're a gift from God to you. You're going to help raise and train your children to grow up to be successful, hopefully in this model, but also your children are going to teach you a lot about yourself. I learned how selfish and impatient I was when I had little children, and I had to catch myself and say, these little children don't know any better. It's my job to train them and teach them and love them. And so I had to deal with my own issues in raising these children. And boy, did I grow up fast. If you submit to the Lord in your parenting and you ask Him to help you, He will help you. He really will. He's the best parent of all. Now that was Psalm 127:3. Another point and tip, you are a steward of these children. You do not own them. Why not? Because they are a gift from God to you. So you have them for a little while and then they leave. And you may be close with them or not after they leave, but there will come a time when they are no longer under your umbrella. They're gone. And so your parenting right now, or whenever you do have children, is to prepare them for that time when they are out there on their own. The scripture for stewardship is 1 Corinthians 4:2. And what we want in our stewardship of everything, our money, our relationships, our parenting, is we want to be found faithful. Even if we stumble and fumble and make a lot of mistakes, we're always aiming for that goal or that ideal. And we may never make that, but we're always working toward it. And we want to be found faithful in our heart that we made an effort and we did make changes and we did influence the life of this child. And we can look at this path model over here. The dotted line is the path you want to travel on in your parenting. And so you start out and you are on the path, and then you sway to the left off the path a little bit, but you come back over and you sway to the right, whoa, but you're always trying to come back toward the middle. And that is what you want to do in your parenting, in everything, really. So if this would be authoritative parenting right here, and you're starting off on that dotted path, well, you start off and you may be, a little too permissive. And then you come back over here and maybe you're a little too authoritarian. And then you come back over here and you kind of wiggle back and forth, but you're always aiming back toward the right path. So it's okay to veer. It's like you're learning to ride a bike without your training wheels. See, that's what it's like with everything new that you do. So remember this, and don't condemn yourself when you come out here or out here, because that's part of the learning curve to get where you're wanting to go. Another tip is you want what's best for your children long term. You don't just look at the child right now and say, oh, well, he's crying because he sees the candy bar at the checkout at the grocery store. Well, I better just give him the candy so he'll stop crying. Or I feel embarrassed, I need to shut this child up. Don't think that way. That's just thinking in the moment. You need to back up and think, if I give my child candy every time he screams, what is that going to look like when he's a teenager? That will be ugly, an ugly monster to have to deal with. So deal with the little crises while they're little and train them. But one thing, and one really important thing, when we talk about you wanting what's best for your children long term, Jesus said in Matthew 19:14, let the little children come to me. Let them come and do not hinder them from coming. Okay? You don't want to hinder your children from coming to Christ, from knowing Christ, from following Christ, from becoming Christ-like. That is a force of darkness that is influencing you to do that. So beware of that. And then the last point is invest in your children. Just like you invest your money so it will grow and give a good return or get a good dividend, you want to do that with your children. You want to invest in them because it reaps great rewards. All right? But you do have to invest. If you don't put that $1,000 in, it's not going to come back as $5,000 or $10,000. See, taking the time to train your child, to teach your child, to set limits with your child, especially when they're young, ages 0 to 7, this is the window where you are filling their subconscious mind, age 0 to 7. That's where their subconscious mind is being filled and formed. So those are very important years to invest, all right, relationally and with rules and consequences, a balance. So you're going to invest in them and get great returns. And in doing that, Proverbs 22:6 encourages you to train your children in the way they should go. And then when they are old, they will not depart from it. There will be bumps and bruises and different things along the way. And that's normal and that's expected. And that's their growth path, right? But you want to train them in those formative years, 0 to 7 and beyond, during the whole time they're in your stewardship, so that they will not depart from it. And then that verse that's so scary is, just FYI, is Matthew 18:6. He says, do not let any of you cause an offense to any of the young believing children, because if you do, that means to cause them to veer from the faith or to kind of poison their heart, if you will, away from Jesus. He says it would be better for you if a millstone were tied around your neck and you were thrown into the depths of the sea. He's saying that's going to be a good thing compared to what will happen to you if you do this. So that is a very strong statement and a very strong warning that we need to pay attention to. So whatever the case, you want to remember these tips, and you want to let your little children come to Christ. You want to talk about him with them. You want to read about him with them. You want to base things you do and say on his principles and his teachings. And you will end up being a model, a good example for your child as he or she is growing up. They can have this parent, or hopefully both parents, that are wanting to know the Lord, getting to know him, know his word, etc. So the most effective parenting style is the authoritative. And by the way, a family or a parent who has no authority over their child is an atheistic style parenting. It's atheistic because there's no authority. And God is the ultimate authority. So any authority that you have over your child is representing God. And God has given you, in this stewardship, God has given you 100% authority over your children. The government doesn't have that authority. Your school doesn't have that authority. No one has that authority in God's economy but you. So you can take that authority that he gives you and learn about how to be a good steward of these children that God has given you. All right? So thank you for watching. You guys have a blessed day, and I'll see you next time.